Jason Statham catches a bank security guard humiliating an elderly black man. And what he does next will leave you speechless. But the twist no one saw coming? This old man may have met Jason decades ago, in a moment that changed both their lives forever. Watch the mind-blowing encounter that's exposing systemic racism, sparking national reform, and revealing a truth you'll never forget. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this unforgettable, heartwarming story. It was supposed to be just another Thursday in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of day Jason Statham used to blend into, baseball cap low, hoodie zipped, minding his own business. No red carpets, no cameras, just errands, peace, and anonymity. He'd finished a quiet lunch and was walking back to his parked car when he heard raised voices coming from across the street. His instincts, as sharp as ever, turned his head before his body. A small crowd had gathered outside a pristine, glass-walled bank. Jason's eyes zeroed in on a scene that turned his stomach instantly. An elderly black man, probably in his late 70s, was being pushed out of the front doors by a visibly angry security guard. The man wore a simple brown coat and a fedora, which had been knocked sideways during the scuffle. His cane clattered to the sidewalk, and nobody moved to help him. "You people always come in here trying to pull something," the security guard barked, voice dripping with contempt. "You're not fooling anyone. Go beg somewhere else." Jason froze mid-step. He looked at the man, frail, confused, dignified despite the humiliation, his mouth slightly open, trying to find the words to defend himself, but clearly overwhelmed. And then Jason looked at the people watching, some filming, most doing nothing. He crossed the street before his thoughts could catch up. "Hey!" Jason's voice cut through the murmuring crowd like a blade. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The security guard turned to respond, annoyed. But the moment his eyes landed on Jason, something shifted. Recognition, hesitation, fear. But Jason didn't care who recognized him. "Not now. This man bothering you?" the guard asked weakly. Jason walked past him, picked up the elderly man's cane, and gently handed it to him. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft, respectful. The man nodded slightly. I just came in to cash a check. They said my ID was fake. Accused me of trying to commit fraud. I've had this account for 40 years. Jason turned to the security guard. "You threw him out for trying to access his own money?" The guard crossed his arms. "The ID didn't look right. Could have been a scam. Happens all the time. Did you even check it properly?" Jason asked. He looked suspicious. End of story. Jason narrowed his eyes. "Suspicious? You mean black?" The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman started recording again. The guard shifted on his feet. "Look, man, you don't understand." "No, you don't understand," Jason interrupted. "Because if you did, you'd know that this man could be your father, your grandfather, and you humiliated him in front of everyone." "Listen," the old man said quietly, his voice trembling but composed. "My name is Walter James. I serve in the Army. I worked for the post office for 32 years. I raised 3 kids. I paid off my mortgage. And now, apparently, I'm not welcome in my own bank." The moment he said it, something cracked in Jason's chest. He looked into Walter's eyes and saw the weight of decades, the kind of weariness only a long life can bring. And Jason, a man who had seen violence, war zones, and heartbreak on and off screen, felt his blood boil. "Sir," Jason said, turning to Walter, "we're going back in there." Walter looked at him, unsure. "Son, don't make a scene. It's not worth it." Jason smiled, calm but resolute. "With all due respect, I think it is." He guided Walter past the stunned guard and into the bank's massive, gleaming lobby. Conversations hushed. All eyes were on them. Behind the counter, a young teller froze when she saw them approach. Jason spoke calmly but with authority. "I want to speak to the branch manager." "She's, in a meeting," the teller stammered. "Tell her Jason Statham is here, and that she just made the worst mistake of her career." Moments later, a well-dressed woman in her 40s emerged from the back, clearly annoyed until her eyes landed on Jason. Her face contorted into an awkward smile. "Mr. Statham, what a surprise," she said. "Can I help you?" "Yes. You can start by explaining why Mr. Walter James, a longtime customer, was accused of fraud and kicked out of this bank like a criminal. She blinked, taken aback. There must be some misunderstanding. Is it standard procedure to throw elderly veterans onto the street for trying to cash a check? Jason pressed. The manager faltered. Of course not. We treat all customers with. No, you don't, Jason interrupted again, stepping aside to let Walter speak. Walter took a slow breath, then stepped forward. I've had my savings in this bank since 1981. The teller didn't even look at my ID properly. She said it looked tampered. I've had the same ID for over 10 years. I'm so sorry, the manager said, glancing around nervously at the gathering crowd. Let's step into my office. Jason shook his head. Right here, in front of everyone. There was a long pause. And then, Jason reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out his phone. Because if you don't, this entire story is going public. And I promise you it will. The manager knew she was cornered. She turned to Walter. Mr. James, we deeply regret this situation. Please accept our apology. We'll review the security footage and speak to our staff. Walter looked at her, his expression stoic. Apologies don't undo humiliation. Jason turned back to the crowd. You all saw it. This man was judged by the color of his skin, not his character. This is why people are angry. This is why they march. The room went quiet again. Jason looked at Walter. Sir, let's go. I know another place that'll treat you with the respect you deserve. But just as they were about to leave, Walter put a hand on Jason's arm. Wait, he said softly. There's something you need to know. Jason turned, puzzled. What is it? Walter took a breath, looked around the room, and said something that made Jason's heart stop. This isn't the first time this has happened to me. But the last time, the man who helped me disappear the next day. And he looked exactly like you. Jason froze. What? Walter nodded slowly. Same face. Same voice. It was 20 years ago, but I never forget a face. Jason's blood ran cold. The entire room had shifted. The energy changed. People started murmuring. He looked Walter in the eyes and saw no trace of deception. Only certainty. You're saying we've met before? Walter looked him dead in the eye and whispered. I'm saying, I think you saved my life. Twice. Jason stood in stunned silence as the words echoed in his head. He had no memory of it. None. But something about the way Walter said it made him believe. And that's when the real story began. Jason couldn't speak. The bank lobby faded into a blur. The murmuring crowd, the manager's awkward posture, the ambient hum of security cameras. It all melted into background noise. He stared at Walter, confused, almost disoriented. Jason Statham was a man grounded in facts. He didn't believe in mystical stories. But this wasn't fiction. The man in front of him was absolutely convinced. You said I saved your life 20 years ago. Jason asked cautiously. Walter nodded again, slower this time. Yes, it was 2005, summer, right here in LA. I was walking down Wilshire. Back then, I was healthier. I just picked up my pension check. A couple of kids ran up to me, tried to rob me, knocked me down. One pulled a knife. Jason leaned forward, heart now thudding in his chest. I thought I was done for, Walter continued. Then this man appeared, out of nowhere. Took them down like something out of a movie. Disarmed them both. I remember thinking, no one moves like that. No one fights like that. He gave me my check back, helped me up, then said, take care, sir. The world needs you. Jason's hands tightened into fists, jaw clenched. Walter finished quietly. When I saw you just now, I felt the same thing I felt back then. A strange peace. Same eyes. Same voice. Same strength. I know it sounds crazy, but my memory's sharp. I'm not confused. Jason looked down, mind spinning. In 2005, he just wrapped filming The Transporter 2. He had spent time in LA, sure, but something about that specific story, it tugged at something deeper. A memory on the edge of consciousness. A street fight? A knife? It was faint, like a dream half remembered. But there was a pull, and Walter wasn't finished. I asked your name back then. You smiled and said, doesn't matter. Just remember there are still good men in the world. He paused. I never forgot that. Jason swallowed hard. Something in his throat burned. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Walter smiled faintly. You probably think I'm senile. Jason met his eyes. No, I think the universe has a funny way of circling back. The bank manager awkwardly cleared her throat, trying to reclaim the moment. Mr. Statham, Mr. James, we would be more than happy to sit down and resolve this. Jason raised a hand, silencing her. No, this place showed its true face today. You don't get to sweep it under the rug because someone famous walked in. He turned to Walter. Let's go. Jason guided Walter out of the bank, the crowd parting in silence. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, the sun hit them square in the face. Walter tilted his head up, soaking in the warmth, as if shedding the last of the humiliation. I'm sorry that happened, Jason said quietly. Walter shrugged. Not your fault. Happens more often than you'd think. But what you did, that doesn't happen often at all. Jason looked at him, then gestured to his car parked down the street. Come on, you're riding with me. Walter raised an eyebrow. You don't even know me. Jason smiled. I don't need to. You already know me, remember? They both chuckled as they walked toward the car. The car ride was quiet first. Jason drove through the streets of L.A. with one eye on the road and the other on the man beside him. Walter looked out the window, his fingers occasionally tapping his cane against the floor like a soft metronome. Jason finally broke the silence. Do you have anyone? Family. Walter nodded. My wife passed 12 years ago. Cancer. I got 2 sons. One's in the Navy. The other moved to Chicago for work. Good boys. Busy boys. You see them often? Walter shrugged. Life moves fast. You know how it is. Holidays mostly. A few calls a month. Jason glanced at him. You ever tell him the story? About the man who helped you 20 years ago. Walter grinned. I did once. My youngest thought I was dreaming. My oldest said it sounded like a Bruce Willis movie. He chuckled. They're not bad kids. They just never saw what I saw. Jason nodded, thoughtful. Sometimes the world's only real for the people who live it. They pulled into a quiet diner on the edge of Mid-City. Jason had been here a dozen times. A hole-in-the-wall place with cheap coffee and the best sourdough toast in L.A. The owner, a Vietnamese war vet named Tuan, nodded when Jason walked in. No fanfare, just a quiet, respectful nod. They sat by the window. Walter leaned his cane against the wall and looked around. Nice place. Jason grinned. Tuan doesn't judge people by the color of their skin, just by how they treat the staff. Walter smiled. Sounds like a good man. He is. They ordered. Coffee for both. Scrambled eggs and toast for Walter. Jason skipped the food. He was too focused, too wired. His mind kept drifting back to that story. The knife. The quote. The world needs you. Where had that line come from? Walter watched him with curious eyes. You seemed troubled. Jason hesitated. I'm trying to understand how you remember something so clearly that I don't. Walter folded his hands. Memory's a strange thing. Sometimes we forget things that matter. Sometimes we remember what we need to. Jason leaned back. Do you believe in fate? Walter's eyes twinkled. I believe in purpose. You might have forgotten that day, but your soul didn't. Jason didn't respond. He sipped his coffee and stared out the window. Then something caught his eye across the street. A small newsstand with an old magazine cover in the display. His face, from a 2005 issue of Men's Health, back when Transporter 2 had just come out. Jason stood up, walked outside, and bought the magazine. He opened it, scanned through the pages, and found a short paragraph in the interview. In LA last month, he'd said, I saw something ugly, an old man getting attacked. I couldn't just stand there. Didn't do it for attention. Just instinct. Jason blinked. There it was. The memory rushed back in jagged flashes. The knife. The alley. The old man's trembling hands. The check on the ground. The quote. The world needs you. He had said it. It was real. He hurried back into the diner, tossed the magazine onto the table. Walter picked it up, stared at the article. His hand began to tremble. I told you, he whispered. Jason nodded, mouth dry. I didn't remember, but it happened. They sat in silence for a long time. 2 men, 20 years and a million moments apart, bound together by fate. Then Walter looked up and said, You know what's funny? I never told anyone this part. After you saved me, I felt so inspired, I changed my will that week. I said if anything ever happened to me, I wanted my savings to go to someone who makes the world better. Jason smiled, still reeling. You think I've done that? Walter's eyes locked on his. I think you're not finished yet. Jason stared back, unsure why his heart felt like it was about to shatter. And then Walter added, almost as an afterthought, I never told you what bank I used 20 years ago, did I? Jason blinked. No. Walter leaned forward, eyes intense. It was the same one, the exact same bank, same building, same address. Jason sat back, stunned. Walter whispered, almost to himself, it's like the universe brought us full circle. Same man, same place, different time, same lesson. Jason didn't know what to say, but fate wasn't done with him yet. Because the moment they left that diner, something happened that neither of them could have predicted. They stepped out of the diner into the early afternoon light. The sun had shifted westward, casting long shadows on the street. Walter walked slower now, his mind clearly spinning, just like Jason's. The revelation of the magazine article had shaken them both. Jason was a man of action, not reflection. But today, everything felt surreal, like the pages of his life had been ripped out and rearranged by something bigger than himself. Jason helped Walter into the passenger seat, closed the door, and stood for a moment outside his car, hands on his hips, head tilted up toward the sky. He had a feeling, a whisper of tension in the air. Then it happened. As he rounded the car to get into the driver's seat, two LAPD cruisers screeched to a halt beside them. Sirens off, lights flashing. Four officers jumped out, 2 men, 2 women, all in full tactical posture. Hands where we can see them, one of them shouted, weapon not drawn, but hand resting on the holster. Jason instinctively stepped between Walter and the officers. What's going on? Sir, we receive a report of a disturbance involving you and another man at the Citizens National Bank downtown, the officer said. Description matches both of you. Jason tried to stay calm. A disturbance? That man was kicked out of the bank. I walked him back in and stood up for him. That's the whole story. Another officer approached, holding a tablet. Mr. Statham, we've reviewed some of the footage from social media. That's why we're here. There's been a huge reaction online. Half the city's watching this unfold. Jason's eyes narrowed. You're telling me people filmed it, and instead of investigating the bank's behavior, you came after us? The officer held up a hand. Look, we're not here to arrest anyone, but Mr. James needs to come with us. Walter, still seated in the car, looked confused. Me? What? There's an active fraud alert on your account, the first officer said. We've been instructed to detain you for questioning. Jason snapped. That's garbage. This is retaliation. The bank's trying to cover their tracks. Another officer stepped forward, calmer. Sir, listen. A supervisor at the bank filed a complaint stating that Mr. James had a suspicious ID and that someone may be impersonating a deceased account holder. We don't think it's legit, but we have to follow the protocol. Jason looked at Walter. The old man's expression had collapsed into something between heartbreak and quiet endurance. He was used to this. That realization lit a fire in Jason's chest. He's not going anywhere, Jason said firmly. One of the officers reached for his radio. Then we'll need to escalate. Stop, came a voice from behind them. Everyone turned. A sleek, black BMW had pulled up silently, and out stepped a tall, sharply dressed black woman in her early 40s, her heels clicking with confidence. She flashed a badge before anyone could ask. Special Agent Tamara Vance, Federal Anti-Corruption Task Force. The officers hesitated, unsure. She turned to them. You can stand down. Mr. Walter James is under my protection now. Jason's eyes widened. Wait, what? Agent Vance walked up to Jason and extended a hand. Mr. Statham, I've been looking for you. Jason shook it cautiously. What? Because you just stumbled into something much bigger than a single act of discrimination. She turned to Walter. Mr. James, we've been tracking this bank for 6 months. You just became the final piece of evidence we needed. Walter blinked. Evidence of what? Vance glanced around, lowered her voice. Systemic redlining, financial manipulation, and race-based account closures. We've had a hard time proving intent. But what happened today, captured on half a dozen phones and corroborated by a public figure like Mr. Statham, that's the smoking gun. Jason took a breath, processing. So, the fraud alert, fabricated, she confirmed. filed by the same regional manager we already suspect of money laundering and falsifying documents. They've been targeting elderly black clients, freezing their accounts, hoping they'll go away quietly. Walter's hand clenched his cane. His jaw trembled, not from fear but fury. You're saying they wanted me out, not because of a mistake, but because I was on some list. Agent Vance nodded. Exactly. Jason stepped closer. Why hasn't anyone stopped them? We needed someone the public would rally behind. Someone who wouldn't be brushed off. You made it impossible for them to hide today. Walter looked between them, stunned. All I did was try to cash a check. Agent Vance looked at him with deep respect. And that check may have just helped bring down a city-wide criminal operation. The next few hours were a blur. Agent Vance escorted Jason and Walter to a nearby field office, where Walter was treated with the dignity he'd been denied for years. They confirmed his ID, cross-referenced his account history, and authenticated everything. Then they showed Jason and Walter a whiteboard lined with photos, dates, and names, all tied back to Citizens National Bank. Jason stood there, arms crossed, staring at the tangled web. I had no idea, he muttered. Vance walked up beside him. Most people don't. Racism isn't always a punch to the face. Sometimes it's a form you never see, a check that never arrives, a mortgage that never gets approved. But when someone like you shows up, the cameras turn on. People start listening. Jason looked at Walter, who was sitting nearby with a cup of tea, surrounded by agents who listened intently to his story. You picked the right man, Jason said quietly. Vance nodded. I think the universe picked both of you. That night, Jason drove Walter home to his modest apartment in Baldwin Hills. The sun was setting, casting golden rays across the city. As Jason helped him out of the car, Walter paused. I never thought I'd see justice. Not really. I thought maybe one person would care, but not the world. Jason smiled. The world's watching now. Walter patted Jason's shoulder. You ever wonder why it had to be you? All the time, Jason admitted. Walter nodded, serious now. Then listen close. Jason leaned in. There's more to this than fate, Walter whispered. I wasn't supposed to go to the bank today. I was going tomorrow. But something told me, know someone, go today. And when that man pushed me out onto the street, I saw your face and I knew I wasn't alone. Jason's throat tightened. Walter, you're not just some actor, Jason. You're something else. A vessel. For justice. For courage. For people like me. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Walter smiled again, but this time there was something different in his eyes. Something deeper. Wiser. You didn't save me today, he said. You fulfilled a promise. Jason raised an eyebrow. What promise? Walter turned toward the door. One you made before you were born. Jason stood frozen, watching Walter disappear into the building, came tapping steadily up the steps. The moment the door closed behind him, Jason's phone buzzed. It was a message from his publicist. You're trending in 43 countries. 500 million views in under 6 hours. But Jason didn't care about the views. All he could think about was what Walter had said. One you made before you were born. He didn't sleep that night, because something about that sentence felt true, and it was only the beginning. Jason didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, as Walter's words echoed through his mind like a haunting melody. You didn't save me today. You fulfilled a promise. One you made before you were born. At first, Jason thought it was just poetic language, an old man's way of expressing gratitude. But something about the way Walter had said it, something about the weight of it, made Jason feel like the air had shifted. He finally got up at 5:23 a.m. He couldn't take the stillness. He made a pot of coffee, sat on his balcony overlooking downtown LA, and scrolled through his phone. Not for social media, but for answers. He started researching Citizens National Bank. Their history, their board of directors, a rabbit hole of lawsuits and whispers, allegations, settlements, cover-ups, but nothing had ever stuck. Nothing until now. His own video, captured by dozens of strangers, had gone viral. But the twist? People weren't just focused on the racism. They were obsessed with Walter James. Who was this man? What was his connection to Jason? Why did he speak like a prophet? Why did he seem to know something Jason didn't? There were hundreds of comments, theories, speculations. This isn't just a bank story. This feels like destiny. Walter's not just an old man. He's a messenger. That moment where he said, "You made a promise before you were born," goosebumps. Call me crazy, but I think Jason Statham is living out a forgotten past life. Jason closed the app. He didn't want attention. He wanted truth. And the truth felt like it was hiding just beneath the surface of everything. Right under his skin. Like a dream he'd had as a child, but couldn't remember clearly. He picked up his keys and drove. By 6:40 a.m., he was standing in front of Walter's apartment building, clutching 2 cups of coffee and a bag of warm croissants. He knocked gently. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Jason's stomach tightened. Something fell off. He set the coffee down, pulled out his phone, and dialed the number Walter had given the FBI the day before. It rang and rang. Then voicemail. Jason tried the buzzer. No one picked up. He paced for a few minutes, unsure of what to do. Then an elderly woman in a robe opened the building's side door, squinting at him. "You looking for Walter?" she asked, her voice raspy. Jason nodded. "Yes. He lives here, right?" She frowned. "He did. Moved out 6 years ago. That apartment's been vacant since." Jason blinked. "No, that's impossible. I dropped him off here last night." She shook her head. "Must have been someone else." "Walter James? Sweet man. Lost his wife. Had a stroke in 2017. Moved to a care facility after that. Been gone a while." Jason took a step back. "Gone?" She nodded. "He passed away. 5 years ago. Cancer." Jason's heart stopped. He stared at her, words failing. No, that can't be. He was here. We had dinner. He walked up these stairs." She shook her head again, now looking concerned. "You must be thinking of someone else, honey." Jason didn't argue. He thanked her and walked back to his car like a ghost. He sat behind the wheel, the coffee now cold in his hand, his mind spinning in silence. Gone? Dead? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? No, Walter wasn't an actor. He couldn't have been. Jason opened his phone again, pulled up the footage from a bank. He rewatched it, frame by frame. Walter's face, his voice, the moment he said, "I think you saved my life." Twice. Jason tried searching Walter's name. Walter James, Los Angeles, obituary. The first result hit like a hammer. Walter Eugene James, U.S. Army veteran. Died 2020. Age 77. Survived by 2 sons. Lifelong advocate for civil rights. Known for a mysterious story he told to friends and family. That he was once saved from a robbery by a man who moved like lightning and vanished without giving his name. Quote, "He told me the world still needed me." That moment changed everything. Jason dropped the phone. His head fell into his hands. Was he going insane? Had he really just spent the last 24 hours with a ghost? A hallucination? He sat there, shaking, until his phone buzzed again. A new text from an unknown number. "You kept your promise. W." Jason's breath caught. He stared at the screen. And then, for the first time in his life, Jason Statham cried. Not because he was sad, but because for the first time, he felt used by something greater than himself. Hours later, the story broke nationwide. The FBI raided 3 branches of Citizens National Bank. 10 executives were arrested. Millions in misappropriated funds were frozen. The faces of the scandal? A single photo. Jason, standing protectively beside Walter as the crowd in the bank looked on. The headlines didn't mention movies or red carpets. They said, "Actor helps expose largest financial racism scandal in California history. Mystery man identified." Veterans' warning changed Jason Statham forever. But the world would never know the full truth. Because there was no footage of Walter after the bank. No record of him at the diner. No security cam footage of Jason helping him into the car. It was as if Walter James had vanished in a thin air. And maybe he had, because what happened next will challenge everything you think you know about time, purpose, and the bond between strangers. The days that followed the scandal were a whirlwind of media frenzy, congressional hearings, and relentless investigative journalism. But for Jason Statham, the noise faded into an internal dialogue, a conversation with his own soul that he had long ignored. Every headline, Every viral clip, every whispered comment about the mysterious Walter James stirred an ache deep inside him. He knew he had done the right thing, yet the weight of Walter's parting words continued to haunt him. "You fulfilled a promise before you were born." Jason drove through the quiet streets of Los Angeles late one evening, his mind reeling with memories he wasn't sure were truly his. The city lights blurred into a kaleidoscope of colors as he recalled that surreal morning at the bank, the confrontation with the security guard, and Walter's gentle yet firm voice that had carried a secret heavier than any injustice. He couldn't shake the feeling that fate was not merely a random occurrence. It was a meticulously crafted tapestry where every thread, every act of kindness, every moment of courage was woven to reveal a hidden design. As he parked near the old theater district, a place that had always stirred something in him, Jason stepped out of his car, the cool night air rousing a deep introspection. The streets were nearly empty, and only the distant hum of a late-night radio tune filled the silence. He found himself drawn to a familiar corner, one where he'd spent countless hours in his youth dreaming of adventures and heroic deeds. There, in the shadows of a once grand marquee, he recalled a story his mother used to whisper, a tale of destiny and a promise made in the innocence of childhood. She had always believed that every person was born with a purpose, and that one day, when the time was right, the universe would conspire to reveal it. Jason's thoughts raced back to that lost promise. He had been a child with wide eyes and a heart full of hope, believing that one day he would be a protector, a guardian of those who could not defend themselves. In the midst of his daily routines and Hollywood glitz, he had buried that ideal under layers of pragmatism and the harsh realities of fame. But now, Walter's enigmatic message stirred something primal within him, one you made before you were born. It wasn't just a poetic utterance. It was a summons, a call back to a destiny he had once imagined and perhaps even promised. Determined to find answers, Jason began retracing his steps from that fateful day. He revisited the bank where the injustice had unfolded, now swarming with law enforcement and investigative journalists, each trying to piece together the scandals unraveling. In a quiet moment outside the bank, he noticed a young intern, eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder, poring over some old documents that had been recovered during the raid. Sensing the weight of a secret in those yellowed pages, Jason gently approached. "Hey," he said softly, crouching beside the intern on the cold concrete steps. "What are you looking at?" The intern hesitated before showing him a faded photocopy of a bank memo dated back to 2005. Jason's eyes scanned the document, and there, in the corner of the memo, he saw a signature, W.E.J. It was unmistakable. It was Walter's initials. "Who is W.E.J.?" the intern asked, voice trembling slightly. Jason's gaze hardened as he traced the letters with his fingertip. "Someone who left a mark on this bank long before today," he murmured. "And someone who changed my life in ways I'm only beginning to understand." That night, as the city slept, Jason returned to his modest apartment. His thoughts churned with questions. How could he have met Walter years ago without a trace in his memory? And if Walter had indeed passed away in 2020, how had he been there yesterday, at the bank, in the diner, in his own life? Every question deepened the mystery, and the puzzle pieces began to form a picture that transcended ordinary experience. The next morning, Jason sat at his kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee and a notepad filled with scribbled recollections. He recalled a childhood memory, a sunlit afternoon in a small garden, his mother's gentle hand on his shoulder as she told him, "Remember, my son, every soul is bound by a promise. One day, you'll be called upon to honor it." At the time, the words had seemed fanciful, the stuff of bedtime stories. But now, they reverberated with a profound significance that he could no longer ignore. That afternoon, driven by an urgency he couldn't explain, Jason visited a renowned historian who specialized in local legends and forgotten prophecies. The historian, a wizened man with silver hair and a calm demeanor, listened intently as Jason recounted the strange events and the recurring motif of destiny and promise. After a long pause, the historian leaned forward. Many cultures speak of the guardian spirit, a soul who, across lifetimes, is destined to protect the vulnerable and ensure that justice prevails, he said slowly. It is said that such souls are drawn together by forces beyond our understanding. Perhaps what you experienced, Mr. Statham, is not a coincidence. It might be the manifestation of a bond that transcends time. Jason's heart pounded. Are you saying Walter and I are connected by more than just chance? The historian nodded. There is a theory in ancient texts. Before birth, souls make covenants. They pledge to support each other in times of crisis. It appears that you fulfilled that covenant once, and fate has now presented you with another opportunity to honor it. In that moment, the weight of the mystery began to lift. The puzzle was not a trick of the mind or an illusion of the senses. It was a revelation of destiny. Walter James, with his quiet dignity and unwavering resolve, had been a messenger, a catalyst for exposing injustice. And Jason, who had once doubted the whispers of his own heart, now understood that his actions were part of a larger cosmic design. That night, as the city's neon lights danced on the wet pavement, Jason received one final message on his phone. The text was from the same unknown number, simple yet profound. Promise kept. Destiny awaits. W. Jason stared at the message until tears welled in his eyes. Tears of gratitude, of wonder, and of a deep, unspoken understanding. In that moment, he realized that every challenge he had faced, every hardship endured, had led him to this juncture where he was more than just a man in the public eye. He was a guardian, a protector whose every action resonated far beyond the confines of ordinary life. As dawn broke the next day, casting a soft glow over Los Angeles, Jason stood at the edge of the ocean, the salty breeze carrying away the remnants of his past doubts. He had exposed a vast network of corruption, helped restore dignity to a man who had been wronged, and, in doing so, rediscovered a purpose that had been dormant since his earliest memories. The city around him was waking up to a new reality, one where justice had a face, and it was that of a man who once believed that destiny was merely a myth. Jason knew that his journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more injustices to confront. But now he had a clear understanding. Every life he touched, every act of bravery and compassion, was a thread in the grand tapestry of fate. Walter's spirit, whether as a messenger, a guardian from another time, or a reflection of a promise once made, would always be a guiding light in his path. He whispered into the wind, "I remember my promise, Walter, and I will honor it every day." In that simple declaration lay the full measure of his resolve, a vow not only to himself, but to the countless souls who suffered in silence. As the waves crashed against the shore, echoing the relentless march of time, Jason felt a profound sense of unity with the universe. The battle against injustice was an eternal one, and as long as there were hearts willing to fight, there would always be hope. And so, the legacy of that unforgettable day lived on, through the whispered tales in quiet neighborhoods, the headlines of reform in courtrooms, and the silent gratitude of those who knew that a guardian had once walked among them. The promise was kept, and destiny had indeed awaited, revealing that sometimes the greatest twists in life are the ones that lead us back to who we were always meant to be.